Thank you for joining us for smarter portfolios using AI to allocate CapEx and maximize NOI. My name is Miles Kirkpatrick. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Site Technologies. So AI is no longer hype. It's already at work behind the scenes of many of the most optimized portfolios in real estate. Today, we're going to give you insight into what's working, how it's working, and how you can bring these strategies into your own organization. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. Robin, let's start with you.
Hi, my name's Robin Barone, based in New York City. I'm an adjunct at NYU teaching PropTech and digitization, and also University of Miami's Business School, and also a consultant in the product validation space.
Thank you, Robin. Anthony.
I'm Anthony Slumbers, based in London. For 20 odd years, I ran a series of software companies developing largely property management software for office buildings in London. And for the last 10 years or so, I've been doing a lot of writing, speaking, and I teach a generative AI for real estate people course, and I do a lot of speaking around the world.
Thank you, Anthony. And Todd.
Everyone, thanks for having me. Todd Lewis here, San Francisco based. I'm a senior vice president at Prologis, and I help lead our corporate venture arm. I've been with Prologis now for 5 years, and prior to joining, I was a customer. I was at UPS for many years, almost a decade. And while there, I was focused on all things innovation and kind of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. But I spent the last 3 to 4 years at UPS rebuilding their venture arm from the ground up, focused on technologies that could transform UPS into a bigger and better logistics organization. So super excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, Todd. So as you can see, folks, we brought together 3 industry experts and are really excited for the conversation today. So, Robin, let's start with you. Why do you believe AI has moved from buzzword to business imperative in the last year?
Yeah, definitely. It seems like since the start of the new year, it's on the news, evening news, morning news, on every channel from CNN to CNBC to like ABC. I think once you put something in the mainstream like that, and everybody knows, including my parents, I look at it from the perspective of now, your all your stakeholders want to know how you're going to address it. If you start with your employees, your talent, your younger cohort is excited by, working alongside it to making their lives easier. They are very adept at redundant tasks, repetitive tasks, like how do you move the ship along a lot faster? And then you're going to have a cohort who's just fearful, like, will my job be gone? And not seeing it as, they're seeing it as a competitor to the role versus actually how it can actually make it more advantageous. Then, of course, you're going to have customers, clients, and in real estate, your tenants wondering how can it be a competitive advantage from working with you if you're an owner or any type of company. And then lastly, your stakeholders, your investors, your board, they want to know what's your strategy, like how are you going to keep up, monitor, and engage, how are you going to compete, right? They care about you staying in business. And ultimately, everybody's being driven by a natural inclination for FOMO, fear of missing out, because people talk about how fast it is. And maybe last year was more a matter of like, let's wait and see. But now that people talk about it, people engage with things a lot more. They're much more comfortable with it in certain regards. And I think we're all experiencing it in our daily lives from engaging with chatbots. Like it's more pervasive throughout our life. So it feels like you can't ignore it. You just have to find a way you're going to live and adapt and work with it in all parts of your life. It's not just at work, it's at home too. It's how we're living.
Yeah. Anthony, same question to you. Like, is this just a buzzword? Is it a bloated promise, or do you actually see tangible application for this?
Oh, and absolutely tangible application. I think the thing that's happened over particularly actually since last October, the capabilities of these systems have been improving so fast that it's really quite hard to ignore what's going on. I mean, it's interesting if you look at sort of the process of the language models over the last 10 years, because they took quite a while to get going, but they've essentially got 10 times more powerful every year for the last 10 years. And even when, however small you start, if you get 10 times more powerful every year for 10 years, then you suddenly become very powerful. And of course, we're now getting 10 times better from a very high level. And we're also at the same time things are actually getting 10 times cheaper. For any given unit of intelligence, that has been reducing by 10 times every year for the last few years. So we've got this sort of cost of intelligence trending towards zero. And because of that, it's very hard to ignore. And we've got lots of early adopters showing us what's possible. And then I think there's more of a general realization now that actually that a revolution is afoot. This isn't an iteration. This is actually a revolution. And so, you know, that makes a big difference.
I love that word revolution. So Todd, let's move to you, and maybe in
Sure.
the vein of a revolution. So Prologis Ventures very active in the PropTech space. What are you looking for when you invest in companies that tout themselves as being an AI solution?
We have many sayings here at Prologis for how we think about things like AI and the advent of AI. It's everywhere. It's all around us now. It's in every pitch deck that we see, and with every founder, they've somehow woven AI into the conversation. Um, and the reality is, you're either on the train or on the tracks. So, you know, for us, this is the endeavor of taking advantage of AI laden technology isn't just a snap your fingers, wake up and like, you know what, today we feel like we should be leaning in. The groundwork really was laid. We have a brilliant CTO in Sanish Kashav, and could not be more delighted with how he's helped prepare our organization across the globe to take advantage of these new technologies that are starting to emerge. And so for us here at Prologis Ventures, that means that we've really spent a good amount of time preparing our data at scale to take advantage of the new tech that is coming and emerging, where ventures can take a look and take an active role in both investing and adopting across our organization. So here at Prologis Ventures, we're looking at any technology that can transform how we do business. That's from underwriting to scoping to design and resilience. You know, creating opportunities to create a better customer experience, to create faster delivery for our development. We're building, you know, 50 million square feet on average annually. That's a lot. That's a lot of development in our pipeline. And using AI in a way that can help us accelerate and be more accurate, it allows us to buy the best properties at the right price and to drive the best value to our customers. So what do we look for? We look for things that are synergistic with where our current you know, pain points might be, right? So we invest in technologies that we can use and our customers can use, but internally, things that we can use. Where do we spend the majority of our time looking at kind of the crux in some of these development type opportunities, and where and how do we engage with our customers to help make sure that those assets are the best in their entire portfolio? So technologies that can help us do that are very exciting. Things that we try and stay away from, I would say, maybe on a more controversial level, AI for the sake of insight is a yesterday problem. And I just want to hammer that point, because telling me what the problems are, what the opportunities are, is only one part of the problem, right? And it's like a hall monitor that's constantly going around and be like, you could fix this, you could fix this, you could do this. That's great. We need it to be operationalized. And that's where agentic AI has started to take flight, where we can not only identify where issues and opportunities are, but in a clickable format, dispatch those endeavors to take advantage of those opportunities. And that's, you know, in part why we are so excited about partners and investments like we have with Site. And I won't grandstand, but it's all about taking those insights and operationalizing them so that we can see the benefits today. And even though, to your point, Anthony, we've seen a 10x in growth and impact in across all of these different data companies, AI is already driving a tremendous impact today across our portfolio, and we only expect that to grow over time.
Actually, Todd, can I just jump in there? Because I think you said something really interesting, and for the audience is an absolute thing that they should put in 100 point on a post-it note on their desk. Is you said you've spent a lot of time sorting out your data and over the previous years. And there is what I'm seeing a lot of now is various companies really starting to motor with the AI because they've spent the last 2 or 3 years doing the really boring process of sorting their data out. But once they've got their data out, you can play with all these tools and you start talking about agentic stuff. If you haven't got your data sorted out, you can't play the game. And I think that's so important to ram home to people before they start jumping in to what should we be doing is, well, have you got your data in order? Have you got somewhere that you can point AI at that it can see the totality of what you're doing? So that's really such an important point.
You're flagging an issue about like you said boring, and a lot of people, there are a lot of owners in this world or participants that get into, they like the deal, just closing it and organizing the back end functions where you actually make money it's boring and it's not exciting, right? And they hand it off, and a lot of those key decision makers have no clue what's actually involved in any of these daily functions, so it's not a priority, right? And human nature just gets thrown to the side. And if you were to survey a lot of people, a lot of groups, they don't pay attention to these things. So they can bring in all these fancy tools, but they're not ready to bring them in because they haven't done the work themselves. And it's incredibly hard to self-reflect and, put them through that work. Or, you're not their therapist, but almost, of course.
Robin, I'm going to come back to you on that. I think it's really interesting, but I want to summarize what Todd said. So Todd, you said something, AI for the sake of insight, I'm going to summarize here, is out. What you're saying is AI, insight plus action, is really what you're looking for. Did I capture that correctly?
That's right.
Okay. Robin, so let's go to you on that vein. So when we spoke earlier in the week, I really enjoyed our conversation, but you mentioned that you had spoken with hundreds of founders in the PropTech space and interviewed them, which I think is fantastic. We'd love to see a roll-up of that data. There's so much great insight in there. But what are some of the common problem areas that they're looking to solve? And I'm curious, to Todd's point, if they are looking to solve kind of like using AI with the insight plus action, or if they're kind of focused on more of the insight or maybe the action piece.
So from the founder perspective, it's a bit different because some people are building solutions that AI is a feature and some are now coming up as AI as a tool, or some don't really need AI for that specific function. I think the bigger issue is kind of going back to what I just said about, is the customer ready? There's been so much change. If you think about real estate and innovation and technology and our maturation, right? We're still, what's the origination of, bringing in more, we didn't really go public until the 1990s. Like, we're behind on so many governance and processes and technology really having a really major seat at the table. So when you think about that in the culture, that's one issue in itself, that talent. There's not enough talent in most of these organizations to understand the back end and the actual technology. So you have a lot of people just not ready and embracing, and there's a lot of change coming super fast. And some of this change requires, for companies, organizations, especially larger ones, have been set up. They're kind of like tanker ships. They're set up with all these different processes. And so even though there's all these amazing tools, it requires the company to reimagine their workflow process. For people, for certain, depending on leadership and the culture, that can be scary, that can be overwhelming, that could be a whole host of other things in an organization. And so there's only so much you can move the needle so fast. And so it depends on where this organization is. Like, did they adopt in the late teens a round of technology? Did they adopt technology because of COVID? Like, where are they also in their origination? Like, how do you think about that in terms of organizational development? Is to me, that's like one of the bigger challenges, because it's not like there's like not an appetite. It's more a matter of the execution in-house, which is different. And so the founders face challenges on not just finding the stakeholders, but the education selling. Because most owners will see a call or a flyer, they might take the call, but they're not ready to be a buyer. I think it requires a bit more preparation, because some of integrating these technologies, it's not like you're replacing an existing solution and saying, here, for a better price, you're going to get more features. It's something, you're trying to fit it in, and they can't imagine it. Like, they're not understanding how it's all going to focus. And so it takes a certain culture to embody and empower people and staff at all levels to want to embrace it and learn and be curious.
So Robin, are you, to summarize what you're saying, are you saying that the founders and the technology might be ahead of organizational readiness? Like enterprises just aren't ready to adopt some of this technology?
Yeah, like, so if I look at just like a survey of multifamily owners I've done, this past like 3 months, like probably 10% are ahead of the curve on average. A third of them are in that middle, and a third of them are just why. And then there's just people who are not, who are just embracing technology because they saw Prologis is doing it, so it must be a good idea, but they don't know why. So when they buy or engage, they don't know why it's not going to be a fit, right? They just bought it because they saw the label, but it might not be the right fit. That's a larger part is the sales journey. Because if you talk to most founders, depending on their solution and the issue, like the sales cycle could be 9 to 12 months. That's a long time. And often in real estate, our budgets are annual, right? We've got debt. We have a different, we don't just, decide tomorrow to do stuff. And there's so many stakeholders involved in a process, but that's not our budgeting issues. Our systems are very different than other industries, but it's the sales cycle. And part of it is education and getting, one of the three people in the door to have that meeting, because we don't have deep talent. The ownership doesn't, not every owner has deep talent where people can take on these extracurricular responsibilities to really think about transformation or any type of innovation. It's like their extracurricular, like for me, technology was this extracurricular hobby I picked up on the side, and that's how it began. Just because of the way the workflows are often designed. But I think as things move forward, most owners are going to have to embrace a technology persona role in their executive team.
Right.
Like it needs to have just as large of a conversational piece in operations, I think, as capital markets does, and as acquisitions. And you're talking about just a culture change in some of these in many of these organizations.
Right. So let's stay here because I think this is a really interesting topic. And so Anthony, Todd, you all used to be operators as well, and are still operating in some capacity. So Todd, maybe we start with you. Why is it so difficult for enterprise organizations to bring on this type of technology?
Well, to Robin's point, you have this like suite of early adopters, right? Folks that got excited about new technology, that lean in fast. But the reality is that the advent of AI and the way that it's being sold into enterprises like ours requires a cross-functional like lift where all stakeholders across a multitude of different internal business units are all playing on the same playing field, and that's so much harder to understand as a founder and as someone trying to sell into an enterprise. The fact that once upon a time I could sell just to a CTO, not anymore, because everything I touch, especially if it's the utilization of data across operating teams and development teams and our technology groups, it now touches every single facet of what we do. In each of those groups, it's kind of, it's a weakest link model. You have to lift and bring that education up, and not only just the education and learning around how can I use these tools, but more importantly, making sure that all of those teams are in sync on what's the point and what do they get out of it and what do they need to do to prepare to help each other. Because if you want to have and get the most out of the technologies that we're going to invest in, and to Robin's point, for the founders that are out there trying to sell, it's just hard because you are doing that constant barrage of education. That's something that's, I think, now more prevalent than ever, because you can have a CTO who's obviously very adept on all things the latest AI and how to be prepared for it. But if their operating teams are not, you're kind of dead in the water. You have this lift that okay, then I got to start the cycle over, right?
Right.
And there
Anthony,
are owners to that point that are saying, why should I take the initiative to learn when people are coming to me? They think they need me because I'm the buyer, and they're allowing the investors and the founders to kind of give them a free master's degree in all this. And then they're just sitting there on the sideline. So, taking the calls, they'll allocate a few hours a week till they're continuing education, but they're not really real buyers. So they're just minding the time and taking up space.
Mhm.
I think actually there's going to be a lot of going around the problem of difficult buyers. I mean, there's only so many Prologises out there, companies that are actually really leaning into all this stuff and have been doing it for a long time and are structurally and organizationally ready to adopt new technologies. What I think is quite likely to happen is we're going to see a lot of new companies started And it's not going to be a case of trying to convert the dinosaurs. It's going to be, forget it, we'll do it all. Because the whole idea of software as a service is getting a bit moot now, because there's all these the service side of what you add on top of your software now, and the data analytics and how to do things gets so complicated. It's almost like, well, we might as well do it all for you. It's like there's going to be a lot of companies that will go to businesses now and say, well, we will take over the running of your office building, and we will guarantee all these different KPIs. Or I saw one the other day popped up in one of my feeds, someone who'd been trying to sell construction software into construction companies and just got nowhere, just hitting their head against a concrete wall. Well, they've raised an absolute ton of money, and they're going to start a new construction company with all of this stuff embedded in it. And it's interesting, and this is going into other areas as well. There was a story a couple of weeks ago about two very senior ex-people from PwC and EY who've just raised $300 million from Warburgs to set up a new AI professional services organization. So they're starting with domain expertise coming out of some of the incumbents and going, right, well, we're going to be AI first the whole way through now, and we're going to design everything around. And I think you're going to find a lot of that. And that, to me, is when you're going to get the crisis point within the industry where everyone goes, oh, hell, I can't just sit here being smug saying, well, I'm the buyer, you have to do what I want. You're going to have a really hard competitor to start dealing with. And it's going to be unfair competition, because the capabilities of a fully enabled AI organized organization are not going to be 10%, 20% more than a standard organization. They're going to be 10x better. They're just going to be able to do an awful lot more. And so I think we see a lot of that. And then the really best founders and the best technology companies are going to join in the ecosystem of these new companies that just say, you can do it. I mean, it's funny, going with my background from 20 odd years ago, I started a property management and what is now called tenant engagement joint venture with a company called British Lands, which at the time was the largest real estate company in the UK. And it had a very authoritarian boss at the time who basically, public company, but really you could do what he want. And that was amazingly good. They ran the property management. We would finish some software on a Friday and stick it in the building on a Monday. And so you don't, you need to get that sort of relationship with whoever you're working with, so you can just go.
Yeah.
I love that suggestion you have, or not, the comment you made about how they're saying let's go build our own and be ahead of it. Because one of the things I do encourage my students in class is to think about is this function, when we're looking, whatever component it is it unique to real estate, or is it the behavior something that exists elsewhere? And to think, okay, so you're a founder, don't lean on selling to this group of certain type of owners. Why not say, here's a function, how can I apply it elsewhere? So one of the things I've seen is there's actually an AI company in the multifamily space who realized the whole, recruitment of tenants process is similar to healthcare hospitality. And everybody, hospitality is everywhere. And that's actually where they're going to probably become this even massively larger company, is by focusing on the function. And that's a different take on that. And I think if we think about things as, for example, we might be using a Salesforce CRM into real estate now, that's not a real estate based solutions. We might be adopting things. I think the companies that really succeed and thrive can say, here's a part and here's how to make whatever my solution venture might be, it's how can I make it applicable to everybody else and apply it in different forms and different verticals. That's what I get excited about when I look at something can you be used in more than one way?
Yep. Okay. All right. So let me summarize that last conversation. So, or what we've talked about so far. So I think we all agree that AI is here. We all said that it's really difficult to bring into an enterprise organization. We're not sure if enterprises are ready. It's really hard to sell. So what do we do? If you're an enterprise organization, how do you evaluate AI? How do you actually bring on something that is going to drive change? So Todd, I'll start with you, just because I think you've done this before. So how do you do it?
Well, we take a very pragmatic approach to the deployment of new AI. And I would say that one of the most exciting, and it's a slight pivot from the direct question, but I'll get back to it, I promise.
Yeah.
One of the most exciting parts of the advancements of AI is actually the creation of self-built applications, right? So there's been this new lift, and it's been, I would say, in the last 6 months, it's 10x'd in the ability to self-build our own applications using these new LLMs that we've embedded in how we operate every day. And before that was impossible. It was an impossible task to think, you'd need an army of developers and engineers internally to help create, new application after new application. There's these long 6-month, 12-month queues to create a new, just basic function for your operators to lean into. Well, that's not the case anymore. And using a new suite of AI tools to self-build our own new AI tools is accelerating how we use it, and it's just creating this amazing lift across the entire company. We did a survey not that long ago, and every single person within our company at this point, so that's 25, 100 plus folks, is an adopter and is using AI across the portfolio. Now, I say that to say, I'll bring that back. It's not only getting easier to build our own tools, but when we find partners like the Sites of the world, like the Passive Logics of the world, who are embedded and using these digital native business models and businesses that we can partner with to drive transformative value to our customers and our portfolio, the way we engage with those businesses is very tactful. And we have a wonderful suite of regional operators on the local level who are all raising their hands to partner with technologies that can drive value to the end customer. We are at the ground level obsessed with our customer experience, absolutely obsessed with it. And so when we can and where we can deploy technology to create a better property, a better engagement, 9 times out of 10, we're going to do that almost instantly, but we're going to do it in a very meaningful and tactful way designed for scale. So we have teams where we can go and we can work with to design a pilot, and we can take those pilots and set out a set of success criteria. Here's what good looks like in this pilot, because anybody can do a pilot. At this point, I am convinced, and having been in this field for quite some time now, pilots are cheap. If you're not designing your pilot with a set of success criteria and what you will do with it after, then you are failing the company you're working with and your own company, because you're just going to go from one pilot to the next pilot. And that's the hardest part for scaling and adopting AI, is to get people to understand, here's the goal, here's how we're measuring towards that goal, here are the people that are responsible for it, and if we're successful, here's what's happening next. And it's that part right there, that here's what's happening next, that always becomes the crux of the climb, because that's a hard conversation to have internally. You have to go and you have to say, hey, we're going to test with Site Technologies, and here's what we think we're going to get out of it. But if we're successful, we want to go deploy that at scale. Everything Prologis touches and thinks about today is, how do we do this at scale? How can we create impact at scale? With 1.4 billion square feet under management, we better be thinking that way. And our customers would demand that from us. So a big part of it is about being thoughtful about how you engage with companies that are using AI to drive impact, and that have the ability to help us usher in a kind of a new era of how we operate our properties and work with our tenants. But even more importantly, it's taking those next steps to make sure you've got the right success criteria and the right next steps in place to make them successful.
Anthony?
May I just ask Todd a question, because it's really interesting. Again, I was going to say, one of the most important points about how you get this going through the company, you have to have an AI literate employee base. Everyone in the company needs to have a degree of AI literacy. And just listening to Todd there, what you're talking about there, everyone's adopting it. So how did you get AI literacy to wash through so many people so quickly?
Well, again, I'm gonna tout I'll always tip hats where I can, and I would tip hats towards Shanish, our CTO, who has spent the last 4 years here helping prepare us for AI, but then legitimately lift the entire company in a direction of being a digitally native mindset, right? And that's this new trick in how can you not only teach them about the new tools that are available and how it can help them in their day-to-day function, but give them that education behind the scenes so that they understand what's actually happening and where to systems check it, because AI is not impervious to obviously hallucinations, as everyone knows. And so you have to be able to go through and validate your findings. And so that's a big part of it, is making sure that your teams and your people at an enterprise like ours are ready. And I would give a huge shout out to our CTO, who's done just a tremendous job in doing so. I am going to do one caveat though. And I think about this a lot. We invest in technologies our customers can use, which includes things like machine learning and computer vision and robotics and AI. I don't expect every single person on the ground floor to understand the intricacies of what it means to be a machine learning expert or a roboticist. I mean, they haven't graduated from MIT, some have, but I don't expect them to have that deep understanding of how things work. But what we do expect them to understand is the impact those technologies can have. And that comes from such a simple mindset of being obsessive around that customer journey and their pain points and what they're trying to solve and where they're spending the majority of their time, to where I don't have to know how these things work per se, but I need to know how they impact them. And we can help make sure that the technology side is solved to some degree. We have a wonderful team of data scientists and machine learning experts here that can help us be thoughtful around what technologies we're using, but on the ground floor, make sure they're digitally native enabled, but then also make sure that they're focused on that end result. And that end result is so important to make sure you can get that value unlocked.
Just to
And,
circle
and
back.
sorry, I
I
was
just
just going to say, if you watch the research on this, what you've just said is 100% right, but it's amazing how few companies are actually doing it. You look at the research for how many companies are actually providing any sort of training on this stuff, and it's woefully low.
I just want to
Sorry.
circle back two things one's about Prologis. Like listening to Todd, you almost sounded like your CEO, Hamid, because when he speaks at a real estate conference, he says exactly just that. So to me, it tells me that the culture within your organization is all very centric. And then second, for those who haven't had a chance to meet Sinesh, I had a conversation with him. He's not someone trained from the real estate industry. He's come in from outside, and he has brought in a lot of tremendous insight. In that 1 hour I talked to him, I left with an education that was like priceless. And I'm completely grateful to that conversation on so many levels, like how to think about things differently. But he also has the personality and empathy to connect with people and help them be understanding the possibility and get excited, almost like in that childlike curiosity, like when you come out of college and the world is shiny and new. He helps you reimagine that, and not with the opposite. And so that's like, he's like an amazing gift. And because we
Yeah,
don't
he
have
is.
in real estate this a lot of talent who's homegrown trained. I think I've counted less than 100 qualified CTO personalities, and we've got thousands of companies. And so the only way we're going to get up to speed very quickly is by recruiting more people from outside and bringing them in. And it's only the really larger companies that have the budgets and capabilities to do that. And something I struggle with at NYU is, how can I use my classroom to upgrade and prepare that next generation? And I talk about it with other people and other professionals, like how do we get this done, especially at large organizations, like, in larger companies, can they build training programs? So but to Sinesh's, if anybody has a chance to listen to him talk, he's phenomenal in his thought leadership, and really a great gift. And it explains how, you can create competitive advantages, but also bring everybody along for the ride. And he doesn't see it as he sees it as like a responsibility that's like a privilege. And that's what you need, is more personalities that behave as such in the workplace.
All right. Well, so to recap that string. So the question was, so how do people do it? And so Todd, I thought you had a great response. It starts with a pilot. You got to have firm success criteria, but then more importantly, hey, when this thing, or if this thing is successful, what does actually our deployment plan look like? How do we actually deploy this thing at scale across the organization, which I agree with you. I think is really not talked about, but should be talked about more about how we're actually going to roll this thing out. Okay. So before we open up to questions, I'll do one last one here, and then we'll kind of open up to the group questions. So you all have seen a lot of tech. Okay. What are some of the most tangible use cases of AI in the commercial real estate world that you all have seen? Anthony, I will start with you. Most tangible examples.
To be honest, a lot of the most tangible things are actually not necessarily real estate related.
Okay.
It's around marketing and sales and strategy and tactics and thinking. I find these things such amazing thinking partners, and C-suites need people to bounce ideas off and think with. So in many ways, the ability to upskill and upgrade your own capabilities on an ongoing basis is a superpower if you make use of it. And then really there's just so many things, because it's a general purpose technology. You can pretty well take any workflow within real estate and break it down, and there will be components of it that you can apply stuff to. It's not a point solution. It's pervasive.
Okay. All right, Todd, I'll go to you. Tangible use cases of AI that you've seen.
Oh man, there's so many, right? We have a portfolio of about 50 companies and have been at this for about a decade. So they're all my babies in one way or another. So I will pick on a couple. I would just, and I'm going to generalize, I'll make one broad stroke around some of the most exciting technologies we've seen that are tangibly, you can see them today in action, driving real value. And that's our portfolio companies that include computer vision really in and around the property itself. And so that would actually include our friends over at Site, and how we actually use and partner with them to understand kind of the state of our assets, and ensuring that we're leaning in a way that allows us to understand what repairs need to be made and when, and kind of the state of those assets if we ever decide to purchase or sell or whatever that may be. But even more importantly, I'm gonna pivot that over to the operating side. So for many of our tenants and customers, what happens on our properties is almost like a black box, right? Goods enter the premises, and you're kind of like hoping that one of your management systems kind of dictates where it goes and when it goes and where it is. It's an imperfect system. And if it was perfect, you wouldn't need management systems. And so the use of AI and computer vision at the yard as an entry point has really transformed how many of our customers operate their day-to-day facilities, not only outside the four walls, but inside as well. And understanding what vehicles are showing up, where those assets are, what inventories arrived on time, allows them to operationally become the most efficient they can. And to us, that's incredibly valuable, because in the grand scheme of things, and this is maybe off the record a little bit, is that rent is almost a rounding error compared to your operational budget, right? If you can drive and create efficiency in and around how these people are moving goods every single day, you're creating a huge lift in their capabilities to become efficient engines, capital efficient engines, and growth oriented organizations. And for us, that's the holy grail, is creating, growth laden tenants who want to re-sign leases with us in 5 to 7 years, right? So I would say computer vision, and the entry of computer vision into the industrial setting has been something that I think is one of the most exciting and most tangible in today's day and age.
Okay. Robin?
Yeah, so I'm coming at it from a perspective. I'm not running my own portfolio. I totally support what Todd says on many back ends because of just the way things go. Rents are locked down and you have to figure out the back end. I see it as right now for me, it's been on the communication and research side for finding information super quickly. Just a case study a couple days ago, I was like, let me see how students write papers. How will they use ChatGPT to answer my assignment and not do the work? And I put in a few data points, and it actually, it's surprising what kind of quality comes out on the other side very quickly. And you go, wow, that took me 2 hours and not 3 days. And so the communication point is pretty incredible in terms of what it was able to do, but also just finding things and discovery. And so it's saving me time and not those admin task things. Like that's how I'm engaging with it on a pretty regular basis, which is not as exciting when it comes to operations, but it's part of your workflow. People don't realize like, it's part of your time management is how do I find this? Where's the law? Like the searching capabilities in any function to find the data or whatever answer it might be is, I found it to be incredibly valuable.
Okay. So we'll now move to some Q&A. We've got a couple questions rolling in. So the first one is for a commercial real estate leader who wants to start their AI journey. Okay. Where would you suggest they begin? And I think secondary question to this, which I think maybe is also equally as important, what mindset should they adopt? So where should they begin? Like, how do they determine what problem they actually want to solve? And then what mindset should they adopt as they go into that evaluation? Anybody would start?
I have a small take on that. From a mindset perspective, there is I would be remiss if I didn't highlight that there's a lot of humility that comes with preparing yourself for AI. And what I mean by that is there's a journey that you will have to undertake from a data perspective to prepare yourself to take advantage of all the new wonderful tools that are being created. And in that journey, you will find that there are simple things that you have not captured, simple data points that has not been captured over X amount of years. And that adds up. And it adds up in a big way to where you can feel like, man, we have no idea. We just have no idea or understanding of the characteristics of the facilities that we manage every single day. And we should. And on the most local level, I guarantee you do. But it's all up here. And your best and brightest people, the people that have been with your organization forever, they're this wonderful redundant machine that has a repository of like, oh, I know that building and I know its characteristics. I know that tenant, I know every single person that works there. I know how they operate. I know what matters to them. It's capturing that data and surfacing it into kind of a single repository that then unlocks a scalable means to take advantage of these tools. And that is a journey. And so I would, if I could preach two things, I would say, number one, be prepared to have a good amount of humility as you embark upon preparing yourself for AI. And then number two, it's a game of patience as well, right? Dictation around, entering data points is a very mundane and sometimes monotonous task for your operators, and motivating them by showing them what's possible, showing them how AI can help change their day to day. They're spending 3, 4, 5 hours at a time every week doing XYZ task that can almost be automated instantly, so long as you have the data in the right place. And it's that piece of the puzzle that I think some operators and many leaders will come at it and say, hey, I'm forcing you to do X. What's missing is this is what you get from it. I want to show you what's possible. And that's why it's so important for us to capture every amount of data we can and have kind of a single source of truth where we can access and tap into it. So that would be my personal perspective.
Okay. Anthony?
Can I jump in on the other side? The data and the predictive AI stuff is absolutely as Todd said, but in some ways it's a little bit harder to get to grips with unless you've got someone like Todd to go and show you what these things can actually do. But if you look at the generative AI side, so the ChatGPT, the Claude, the Gemini side of things, I would say that the mindset one should always have is just being curious. It is being curious, and then one should take one of these tools and use it a lot every day and try and see what you can do with it. You have to start to get a feel for what these things can do, and over time you'll get an idea of what Gen AI is good at. And then the most important thing, I think, is not so much to be thinking about how do we make more efficient what we've done now. So if you like, digitizing the past, I think it's incredibly important for people to think, what does this now enable us to do that we couldn't do before? because in all of this stuff, we have got to build a bigger pie. Because whatever way you look at it, there's going to be an awful lot of disruption and awful lot of displacement because of these technologies, that we need to build a bigger pie to keep everyone busy. So we really need to concentrate on not how do we do what we do now better, but what can we do now that we couldn't do before. So how can we be Uber as opposed to a taxi? So Uber didn't think, oh, how do I make taxis better? They thought, how do we completely reinvent the idea of getting from A to B? And across a lot of, I mean, obviously there's a lot of operational stuff that just needs to be done, but on a wider sense, what type of building is someone going to need in 5 years' time? And what are they going to do in it? And when you start thinking like that, and you start thinking what the technology might be like in just 5 years' time, so just one development project away, you start thinking, well, probably not what it looks like now. And so what do we do? What do we do to meet the future ahead? And it's fun. It is genuinely fun for curious people that love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want
Robin?
to reiterate what Anthony said. Like, the curious mindset is imperative, or some people call it the beginner's athlete's mindset. Like, in the beginning, it's going to be like learning any type of language or new sport or anything of the like. And some days you're going to go 10 feet forward, and some days you're going to fall back 5 and feel like the biggest loser. And you just got to pick yourself up and then you find discernment when it comes to engaging or bringing things in. My only recommendation from seeing things go well and bad is prioritizing. Like, don't pick things just because it's in vogue. Learn your organization and understand, like, what does your organization really, like, prioritize what has to be addressed. And you can't do everything all at once. You're setting yourself up for failure. So figure out like how things are going to, the flow you want and where you want to address, because transformation can bring a lot of anxiety and have other side effects depending on just the culture. I would navigate that incredibly cautiously, but it can be done. And just to kind of circle back with the last 2 things Todd and Anthony said, is also talk to your customers or your tenants. I don't know your portfolio background, but Anthony mentioned, like, what's the future going to look like? The best way to find out is to have those conversations with, the tenancy, depending on the personality, right? But like, what are they thinking about? What are they talking about? Open up the dialogue, because I'd imagine that's going to build a lot of trust. But that's like, don't leave them out of the conversation if you want to be a great landlord or owner of sorts. Like, they need to be a participant on the journey as well, because maybe you guys can find a way to build the future together. People like to be included and feel like they have a say, even if their feedback's not involved. So I would just start having those conversations. Like, and it doesn't have to be a real, like, business oriented. It could just be, I used to call them kick the tire conversations, and over coffee, and it's just casual. Like, what do you think? And like, let's see what happens.
Okay. All right. We'll do one more question and then we'll end. So the question is, and I don't mean to end on a risk question, but I think in the spirit of the conversation, let's talk about risk. So what do you think is at risk for real estate companies that do not adopt AI, that do not take the plunge, that do not enter with a curious mindset, that don't try to bring this technology into organizations? What happens to them? Anthony?
They will need to be quite amazingly brilliant at something other than AI to not end up in a heap of trouble. I mean, just adopting AI doesn't mean you're going to be a success, but you just look at the organizational change. I mean, there's so much of what we're talking about. Actually, we often talk about it in tech terms, but really this is a change management situation going on here. This is the early 90s, or suddenly you had technology entering into the business world, a completely different environment. If you don't, I think you're in a lot of trouble if you don't leap in. I think you've got a couple of years, but my flip side, I always say to all the people who do my course, you just really make hay for the next 2 years, because you're early and not that many people are doing this stuff. You listen to Todd and you think, well, everyone's doing all this stuff, but he's an outlier. They're outliers. Most people aren't doing anything. So leaning in now is a huge competitive advantage, and you've got a good couple of years before either everyone's going to catch up or you're going to start seeing people fall away.
Okay.
I think it's kind of twofold. It's just like to support what Anthony said is the trouble is going to come from unless your property is a place a tenant needs to be, you're going to not be competitive from a leasing perspective, whether it's maintaining your rental rate or just maintaining occupancy. And then on the flip side, when it comes to talent and staffing your operations, I've talked to plenty of, operational asset managers who have, they switch jobs, not realizing that antiquated the organization was and how non-tech user friendly it was. And they made this choice without asking the questions because it didn't occur to them. And there's a lot of people who don't want to work, a lot of younger talent. And younger is not really like 25-year-olds. It's once people have engaged with technology, they want to keep it as a part of their workflow. They don't want to go backwards. And so, and this is all ages. I'm not trying to be very specific. So you risk like not retaining your talent, and because talented people want to be with innovative, forward-thinking people that want to achieve, right? They want to go back to those places. So you risk losing people that really could create value in your organization.
100%.
Yeah. Todd?
I'll point out the obvious. These are all wonderful acquisition opportunities for Prologis because it's inevitable. It's inevitable that if you're not we fundamentally believe that if you're not on the train, you're on the tracks.
Yeah.
And that you will not exist. There's just too much of a separation in what customers will expect from a landlord and developer, that if you do not have those capabilities laden within your operations, you will not exist in the future. Now, I don't know when that is. I don't have a crystal ball. But again, for Prologis, that creates opportunities because those portfolios that have not adopted technology, as they drift away, they can be pulled into those that have. And I think that will be something you will see over time. So,
Okay.
The one exception being is the portfolios that have no leverage because they're owned by family offices. So they just seem to be in a different planet altogether, but they don't have to worry about the lender to pay back.
sure.
Yep. All right. Good point, Robin. Well, thank you, everybody. This concludes our webinar conversation today. So again, thank you, our panelists, the folks who dialed in, as well as all the folks at Site Technologies, the team who helped put this together. So if you'd like to learn more about how Site is helping our customers use AI to help extend the lifespan of their assets and optimize CapEx, you can learn more by visiting our website at sitetechnologies.io, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. So with that, I'll say thank you. We look forward to doing this again. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.